Hi everybody, my name is Derek Nash. I want to welcome you to the Post-War Show. Thanks so very much for tuning in, and to those of you who have been so supportive in me getting this started, I want to give you a special thanks. I know I have a tendency to procrastinate, but your support has been invaluable, so I really want to give you a heartfelt thank you for that. A lot of gratitude your way. To the rest of you, all I ask is that you keep an open mind. Some of the information that I'm going to present, it's going to be shocking and downright unbelievable at times, and I just encourage you to do your own research, and you'll quickly find that everything that I'm going to tell you over the course of this show is very verifiable. It's all out there. You just got to look, you just got to look. There's so much stuff declassified that they just don't tell you about on the mainstream media, so you don't know about it. So please do your own research, and I think this show will change your perspective on not just the United States politics and society, but internationally. Everything will change. Everything that you think you know about this country is at least half wrong. And I found out, the hard way. But I also want to add that the post-war show title, it doesn't come from any military conflict. It's actually derivative of the war by the corporations teamed up with the government as their donors against the working middle class. I mean, 80% of us are working paycheck to paycheck, so it's virtually a failed state at this point. So let me ask you if you've ever wondered why it is in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that a single blue-collar head of household man could buy outright, with a mortgage, but eventually before retirement, own his own 3 or 4 bedroom home, 2 nice cars in the front, and retire with a pension in economic comfort, and why that's such a stretch of the imagination today. I mean, yeah, the pension is virtually extinct. It's been replaced by the 401k, which was initiated to benefit the corporations and hurt the workers like everything else. It's a crazy thing, and today even fewer companies offer the 401k in its place, about 25%. So I live in a city of about 400,000 people, and I've found 5 companies that still offer a pension, and 25% of the jobs that should offer benefits offer a shoddy 401k in its place that matches maybe 1.5 to 3 at the most percent. And the thing about the 401k is that there's no real safety with that. Its existence is in the Wall Street casinos, and work in construction. I've met just in the last couple of years over a dozen people who have lost every bit of their retirement in that 2008 crash. So there's no real stability or safety in that 401k retirement plan. Now, since then, of course, we've dealt with the coronavirus scamdemic, as I like to call it. The Criminal CARES Act stimulus that saw 85+% of its funds go directly to big, giant corporations that were highly profitable, no risk of them suffering as a result of this pandemic, get the bulk of the money. I mean, 85+%. If they wanted to really stimulate the economy, they could have spread that money around, given every U.S. citizen over $1 million each, and that would have stimulated the economy to the point of orgasm. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would any other government, save for one that's just steeped in corruption, do such a heinous act on its people? For example, Jeff Bezos, owner of Amazon as well as the Washington Post, and this was last month that I checked this, again it's October 3rd, he had saw profits of $26 billion over the course of the first 4 months of the pandemic. Just absolutely insane. And on top of that, their taxes from 2019 they got negative yield back. They got money back from the government. They got a refund. They paid nothing. You and I paid more in taxes last year than Amazon, than most every big corporation that you can think of, sadly. I'm going to give you a list now of the top 60 that you and I paid more in taxes last year than they did. So, here we go. These are our culprits. 91 companies paying 0 or less in federal income 2018 was the nearest that I could get current tax info on. Phillips, and this is all in millions of dollars. So, profit 18 million, tax negative 31 million, with a rate of negative 168.1%. Let's go on down. We see Big Oil here, 8 Ecom Tech, International Business Machines, CenturyLink, Dow DuPont. DuPont there, 217. CenturyLink was up in $1 billion. Going on down, John Deere. And look at these, all negative, all money back. First Data, Duke Energy, another huge oil company, $300 billion, paid back $647 million. Another energy group here in the billions, Whirlpool, Aramark, Bright House Financial. It's just on and on. It's fucking so infuriating. I can't even put it into words. Goodyear Tire and Rubber. Let's see here. FedEx, Spartan Nash, Williams, Chevron, huge oil company. $4.5 billion made, $181 million given back. Delta Airlines, $500 billion, $167 million paid back, and now they need a fucking second bailout after they were bailed out in 2008. Netflix, almost $1 billion at $899 million, while getting a cool 220,000, excuse me, back. Nvidia, more energy companies, of course, here in the billions. Electric Power, Starbucks, $400 billion, got $75 million back. Amazon, $10 trillion. This is 2018. Got $129 million back. $129 billion, excuse me. Unbelievable. More financial services, more energy services, and this is all a direct result of our politicians' Citizens United bill passing and them taking money for their campaigns with no guardrails whatsoever. That's the purpose of Congress, of the House and the Senate. They're supposed to be there to protect us from this bullshit. So the question then becomes, how can it be this way? In the greatest country the world has ever known, right? How can it be that these companies that are raking in such high profits are paying literally not less than us, but they're actually getting paid by the tax system? Well, it's because of the deregulation of Wall Street started by Bill Clinton. It really started in the 80s that these tax breaks for the really, really rich and corporations started becoming a thing. Since 1980, there have been 6 tax cuts that benefited only the 1% or the 0.1% of that top 1%. So yeah, Clinton deregulated Wall Street, and since then it's just gotten worse and worse. Another part of the reason is America had the highest corporate tax rate in the world at 35% up until Trump took office. Now, he knocked it down to 21%, but that still hasn't stopped the likes of companies like Facebook, who you don't see on that list. And the reason why they're not on that list is because they moved their headquarters to Ireland because their corporate tax rate was 20%, which by comparison to our then 35% is a pretty substantial amount of savings if you're, playing within the lines of the rules, so to speak, which virtually none of these corporations are. Another one of the big factors is that they've made corporations people through legislation. I could pull up the legislation if anybody wants me to. Please, just send me a comment or a request, and I'll be happy to do that for you. But yeah, it's so beyond enraging to me that my vocabulary doesn't even have a word in its arsenal to speak of it. I just want to share this news with people. I want to get people the truth so they can act on it, because this two-party system is doing this to us, and we're convinced that there's only these two choices. In 1992, Ross Perot managed to pull 25% as a third-party candidate against Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton. Why? Because he was anti-NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, that has cost us many of our manufacturing jobs, and the ones that it didn't cost us went to the MPTR trade deal with China. So it's all our politicians doing it. I'll show you the clip of Perot. It's fucking awesome. And yeah, I just hope everybody starts realizing that there is no other way to vote but third party, unless you want to vote against your own interests. The fact is that corporate America, through their Citizens United bill that was passed by the Supreme Court in 2010, have legalized bribing. They like to use the euphemism lobbying, but when you hear the word lobbying or lobbyist, that just means bribery, or a person bribing the government for a certain entity, corporate interest. Israel has a huge lobby here in America. There's all kinds of lobbying organizations. Big oil, big pharma, U.S. military manufacturers, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, etc. They lobby the politicians for furthering their own corporate interests, even when it's so damning to such a staggering majority of working-class U.S. citizens, while simultaneously offering gaping loopholes that save the corporations from paying any taxes at all. Citizens United went into effect in 2010, and here's a 2003 income inequality video illustrating the then giant gap in equitable income, which has only accelerated since then, particularly due to the upward transfer of wealth with that just criminal, I don't see how it cannot be fucking criminal, CARES Act stimulus coronavirus relief package.
A Harvard business professor and economist asked more than 5,000 Americans how they thought wealth was distributed in the United States. This is what they said they thought it was. Dividing the country into 5 rough groups of the top, bottom, and middle 3 20% groups, they asked people how they thought the wealth in this country was divided. Then he asked them what they thought was the ideal distribution. And 92%, that's at least 9 out of 10 of them, said it should be more like this. In other words, more equitable than they think it is. Now that fact is telling, admittedly, the notion that most Americans know that the system is already skewed unfairly. But what's most interesting to me is the reality compared to our perception. The ideal is as far removed from our perception of reality as the actual distribution is from what we think exists in this country. So ignore the ideal for a moment. Here's what we think it is again. And here is the actual distribution. Shockingly skewed. Not only do the bottom 20% and the next 20%, the bottom 40% of Americans barely have any of the wealth. I mean, it's hard to even see them on the chart. But the top 1% has more of the country's wealth than 9 out of 10 Americans believe the entire top 20% should have. Mind-blowing. But let's look at it another way, because I find this chart kind of difficult to wrap my head around. Instead, let's reduce the 311 million Americans to just a representative 100 people. Make it simple. Here they are: teachers, coaches, firefighters, construction workers, engineers, doctors, lawyers, some investment bankers, a CEO, maybe a celebrity or two. Now let's line them up according to their wealth. Poorest people on the left, wealthiest on the right, just a steady row of folks based on their net worth. We'll color code them like we did before based on which 20% quintile they fall into. Now, let's reduce the total wealth of the United States, which was roughly $54 trillion in 2009, to this symbolic pile of cash. And let's distribute it among our 100 Americans. Well, here's socialism, all the wealth of the country distributed equally. We all know that won't work. We need to encourage people to work and work hard to achieve that good old American dream and keep our country moving forward. So, here's that ideal we asked everyone about. Something like this curve. This isn't too bad. We've got some incentive, as the wealthiest folks are now about 10 to 20 times better off than the poorest Americans. But hey, even the poor folks aren't actually poor, since the poverty line has stayed almost entirely off the chart. We have a super healthy middle class with a smooth transition into wealth. And yes, Republicans and Democrats alike chose this curve. 9 out of 10 people, 92%, said this was a nice, ideal distribution of America's wealth. But let's move on. This is what people think America's wealth distribution actually looks like. Not as equitable, clearly, but for me, even this still looks pretty great. Yes, the poorest 20 to 30% are starting to suffer quite a lot compared to the ideal, and the middle class is certainly struggling more than they were, while the rich and wealthy are making roughly 100 times that of the poorest Americans, and about 10 times that of the still healthy middle class. Sadly, this isn't even close to the reality. Here is the actual distribution of wealth in America. The poorest Americans don't even register. They're down to pocket change, and the middle class is barely distinguishable from the poor. In fact, even the rich between the top 10 and 20 percentile are worse off. Only the top 10% are better off. And how much better off? So much better off that the top 2 to 5% are actually off the chart at this scale. And the top 1%, this guy, well, his stack of money stretches 10 times higher than we can show. Here's his stack of cash, restacked, all by itself. This is the top 1% we've been hearing so much about. So much green in his pockets that I have to give him a whole new column of his own, because he won't fit on my chart. 1% of America has 40% of all the nation's wealth. The bottom 80%, 8 out of every 10 people, or 80 out of these 100, only has 7% between them. And this has only gotten worse in the last 20 to 30 years. While the richest 1% take home almost a quarter of the national income today, in 1976, they took home only 9%, meaning their share of income has nearly tripled in the last 30 years. The top 1% own half the country's stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. The bottom 50% of Americans own only 0.5% of these investments, which means they aren't investing. They're just scraping by. I'm sure many of these wealthy people have worked very hard for their money, but do you really believe that the CEO is working 380 times harder than his average employee? Not his lowest paid employee, not the janitor, but the average earner in his company. The average worker needs to work more than a month to earn what the CEO makes in 1 hour. We certainly don't have to go all the way to socialism to find something that is fair for hardworking Americans. We don't even have to achieve what most of us consider might be ideal. All we need to do is wake up and realize that the reality in this country is not at all what we think it is.
Pretty fucking dumbfounding for a video that's 7 years old, huh? And preceding the coronavirus CARES Act that saw the largest upward transfer of wealth in recorded human history. It's just, yeah, as I've said before, I don't know at this point whether to laugh or cry. All I know is that I feel an obligation to spread the word. I do apologize for the small errors in the videos, the changing of light and such. I'm just learning this program, but the future videos will be of higher quality, I promise. And I just want to thank you all for tuning in, and please subscribe. Any comments, questions, please leave them. And I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Thanks so much.